Good evening, everyone. Good evening, all the enthusiastic educators present here. I'm Ananya Kulkarni, again, an enthusiastic educator like you all, serving this sector of education since 10 years. Right now, I'm serving as principal of a renowned school at Pune, Kantilal Shah Vidyalaya. Welcome, everyone. I hope my voice is clear and the presentation is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
I request all the participants to keep their mobiles or keep themselves on mute. Okay, we'll be waiting for, as sir said, we'll be waiting for 2 minutes more. I would like to first of all thank Ravikant sir for providing a valuable platform for to grow us in such this wonderful journey of becoming a trainer. Thank you, sir, for your trust and guidance.
You well deserve it, ma'am. Thank you. Let's start, ma'am.
So good evening once again. Just a minute. Okay. So before we dive in, let's take a moment to check in with ourselves and each other. So, how are you all feeling today? Excited? Curious? Or maybe a little tired? Okay, all feelings are welcome here on this platform. So, feel free to type a word in chat or just reflect quietly. How are you? This space is for you all, and we all are learning together. So I could see some. Okay, how are you feeling? Right now, I'm feeling energized, a little nervous, but excited. So, because I truly believe that today's topic has the power to transform how we teach and how our students learn. Okay, I could see some chats. Okay, some of them are curious. Thank you, Neeta ma'am. Jyoti ma'am, thank you. You're curious. Great. Me too. Okay, moving to the next slide. So today's topic, as you all know, that it is understanding learning outcome, objectives and learning outcomes. So before that, thank you everyone. So let's just see this slide. So today's just welcome all of you. I would like to say that today it's just another, not just another training session, but I would like to, it's a compass setting moment. So all of you, please, at this point, we are here to unlock the power of purpose in teaching, as the topic itself suggests, understanding learning objectives and learning outcomes. So because when we are trying to teach something, we need is clarity. We lead, as educators, we have to lead with impact. That is what is important. So let's kick off with one, a powerful thought. If we don't know where we are going, how will we know where we have arrived? That is important. And just I want to place this slide in front of you. Imagine yourself, okay? You are driving to a place you have never been before, and it's all foggy, and the entire road is unclear. So tell me, how would you feel? And can you just chat it in the chat box, or just write few comments that how would you feel if you are driving to such a place that there's no signboards and nothing, and how would you feel? Anyone, please, in the chat box? Okay. Okay. Sabha is telling you'll feel happy. Great, Sabha. Lakshmi ma'am is telling feel lost. Yes, we feel lost, right? Anxious. Yes, Madhvi ma'am, you're right. Unsafe. Nita ma'am, anxious, right? So unknown endpoint. Of course, all of you are right? So because this is foggy path, now I want to just link it with today's topic as well. When we are driving, the same thing have you ever felt in your own classrooms that okay, आज मैंने सिखाया है पर पता नहीं बच्चों को समझ में आया या नहीं. So this kind of feeling, okay, this foggy path represents what happens when we are trying to teach a lesson. Okay, I have done my best, but have my students really understood what we taught today, what I have taught today? So imagine this path. Okay, so we all feel sometimes this way in our when we are trying to teach, and just imagine if this path would have been with certain signposts and signboards or checkpoints somewhere and a destination marked on map. Okay, fine. Just a minute. My next slide. So the path here, now suppose these, I hope this is seen here. I hope this is visible. Now, if you see this slide, if you imagine just now I was talking that we were having a entire foggy road, and imagine this is another um, path which had signboards or the destination is written, okay, which direction we need to go. So how you would have felt? Yes. So that's what in this coming session is going to tell you, that this is about everything. This is a journey about learning objectives and learning outcome. That's what they to clear this fog of our path, to show the path and to give purpose to every step in teaching learning process is done by these two things, that is learning objectives and learning outcomes. So let me tell you that learning objective is the planned route or itinerary set by an instructor. And learning outcomes are the actual destination reached or experiences gained by the learner. That is what I wanted to tell through this slide. Okay. So today's destination is to differentiate between learning objectives and outcomes, write smart objectives, or what are the ways to write smart objectives, to frame smart objectives, how to write learning outcomes, what is the relation between NEP relations and CBPs, or outcome based curriculum is being framed or asked in the policy of national education. So I'm going to tell you all about this. uh, so let us jump to our first slide and getting this topic. What is learning objective? Now, learning objective, teachers, is what a teacher aims to teach, right? Say, for example, we have to design a curriculum. We have to design an entire unit. So what should be our path? A teacher will, okay, I'm going to teach, say, suppose photosynthesis. So I'm going to, okay, I'll frame what is photosynthesis, entire things about photosynthesis. So a teacher aims to teach is something called as the learning objective. And it is just to use to guide instructional planning. Say, for example, students will be able to explain photosynthesis, right? So tell me about, in one word, how would you describe your current setting about learning objectives, right? Say for example, how do you find learning objective when we try to, हमें पता चलता है okay lesson plan में अभी learning objectives लिखने हैं, annual plans में learning objectives लिखने हैं, curriculum designing में we have to write annual objectives. That what is the one word which strikes your mind? Okay, learning objective means this is what I have to write. So what do you feel about it? Can you please write one word for it in the chat box? All the participants, anything about what strikes your mind when you're trying to frame the word, okay, learning objectives. I have to teach this today in my classroom. This is what is my objective today. This is what the journey or path I have to take. So what is the word which strikes you? What is your current idea about setting a learning objective? Can someone of you just write in the chat box so that for myself, my idea is it's evolving, right? So because it's growing and improving every day, if I try to write certain learning objectives or frame certain learning objectives, it is something which is always evolving. It can be, it sometimes it happens, okay, someone has written, okay, Lakshmi ma'am has written, thank you Lakshmi ma'am, proper lesson plan. Great ma'am, that's a correct word, proper lesson plan. So properly writing, or maybe it's a challenging, it's insightful, something which we write about learning objectives. Am I correct? Right? So you can give some thumbs up if you just try to, because this is something, an online session, I cannot see you physically. So please write down some points or give me some thumbs up or some kind of emojis, which will help me to understand that you people are understanding what I am trying to say. Okay. Now, next is, again, my slide is stuck. Okay. Okay. Learning objective in detail. Now, learning objectives, always all instructors should understand. These are the statements. Now, learning objective, either it is learning objective or it is learning outcome. These are the statements detailing what instructors aim to teach. Okay, to teach during a lesson or course. Right now, learning objectives can be specified or focused on content delivery, may or may not always be directly measurable. I'm going to tell you everything in detail, but they serve, first of all, understand one thing, that learning objectives are statement which helps an instructor to frame a roadmap, right? It's an instructional planning work which serves as, say, I have told you about introduction of principle of photosynthesis, can be a learning objective for a teacher, right? Next is, now coming, I'm going to explain in detail, but let me first tell you about the introductory part about learning objective and learning outcome. Now, what is learning outcome? Just now I had told you before this slide that learning objectives are what a teacher aims to teach, whereas learning outcomes are what students are expected to achieve at the end of the teaching process, right? So it helps us to measure the student learning. For example, just now I told you one example of for learning objective, what can be principle of photosynthesis. Similarly, if we are teaching what are the principles of photosynthesis, of course, the learning objective is that, and what can be the learning outcome based on this, that students demonstrate photosynthesis via a diagram. That can be a learning outcome, which we can, of course, assess as well, right? Am I correct? So, in detail, if you want to understand, learning outcomes are the statements describing what learners are expected to achieve or demonstrate after a learning experience. This is very important, that they should be able to, what learners are expected to achieve, okay, they should also be able to demonstrate after a learning experience. Okay, today I have learned, as a student I must understand, okay, what is photosynthesis. If I'm being assessed, okay, draw a diagram about what is the site of photosynthesis, what equation photosynthesis have, or explain the process of photosynthesis, its significance, draw a diagram, identify parts of photosynthesis or the sites of photosynthesis or everything, why chlorophyll is important, why sunlight is important. So So if these are the some of the processes which can be explained based on the learning objective, what teacher has explained, so these statements are nothing but the learning outcomes in detail, right? So difference between objectives and outcomes. So just now I was let me tell you that objectives are, of course, teacher centered, whereas outcomes are learner centered. Objectives can guide teaching, whereas outcomes help in assessing the learning. Please try to make understand this difference. This slide will tell you about the difference between objectives and outcomes, and there are 4 other slides as well. I'm going to just portray here. Now, suppose, just a minute. Uh, just now I told you about objectives is to teach gravity, whereas outcome means students explain the gravity's effect. That can be the learning outcome. Now here is a comparative study chart. I hope you all are able to see this slide. There is a comparative. So what aspects? There are certain aspects written. There are learning objectives and learning outcomes, right? So first, as the definition tells us, what is the definition telling us? That statements detailing about, so the statements is the definition is learning objectives are statements which are made by a teacher, right? What a teacher is trying to tell with the help of learning objectives, the teacher is trying to teach during a lesson or course, right? So a particular lesson, a unit, the teacher is trying to tell. But what a learning outcome is trying to tell, learning outcome will describe that what the students are expected to achieve or demonstrated after learning this kind of experience. What can be the perspective? Second point is perspective, right? So just notice that in the comparative studies chart, the second point is instructor centered. यानी इसका मतलब होता है, right, focusing on the teaching process. So is notice objectives are the instructors centered. They guide the teacher in designing content or activities or instruction. But what is a learning outcome? Learning outcome is a learner centered. That means they focus on what the student is actually able to do and apply or to know. So all these things are based on learning outcomes. And what is the focus? Just read out the sentence. That focus of a learning objective is to emphasize the content and the skills the instructor intends to cover, right? Whereas the learning outcome emphasizes the knowledge, skill the student is expected to acquire. Okay, that means the attitude of the student is expected, what he or she is trying to demonstrate. Okay, I have learned this much. Now what should be my focus? Okay, I have to the shift is towards the focus of the knowledge gain of that particular student, the skill acquired of that particular student. That is what is learning outcome trying to suggest. Okay, and thus as specificity, of course all of you know that outcomes are generally, more specific and measurable, whereas learning objectives are always broad. They are trying to, generally depending on the course structure. So it's the outer frame outlining the framework, right? So that is what is about the learning objectives. Now if you see the aspect of measurability, this is a very important thing. Okay, that suppose if I have to measure, okay, I have to measure the what a child has understood. So during its suppose that in learning objective may not always be directly measurable. That means it serves as guide for instruction, but learning outcome is always measurable and observable. Now how are we going to measure learning outcomes? Of course we are going to assess them, right? We have talked about in NEP also, the policy mentions about outcome based education, right? So this kind of education, that means there is a basis for assessing student. That means we are going to observe their performance, and that is we can measure them, and hence are the assessments for, right? So now the time frame. Now please understand that learning outcomes are applicable to individual lessons or units within a course, but learning outcomes typically refers to the at the end of the lesson or unit of the course, right? Next is assessment alignment. Assessment, it guides the development. For learning objective will always guide the instructional activities and material, whereas learning outcomes will form the basis for, it is like a platform for evaluating the effectiveness of instruction and student learning. Next is introducing, of course, example I have already stated, introducing the principles of photosynthesis can be your learning objective. Of course, in my coming slides, I'm going to show you examples of various subjects and other topics of the curriculum. We can just discuss with you all. So here, if a teacher is trying to introduce principle of photosynthesis, then learning outcome can be students will be able to explain photosynthesis, identify the process, demonstrate the process, signify its process. So all these things, all the Bloom's taxonomy verbs can be described. We can, with the help of this, we can describe the learning objectives. And of course, they are all can be assessed, right? Now, coming to the writing smart objectives. Okay, how are we going to frame? Have you ever wondered how are we going to frame the objectives, right? Okay, लिखना तो है objectives, but कैसे लिखना है और क्या होना चाहिए? तो एक बहुत ही अच्छा शब्द है smart objectives, right? Smart यानी यहाँ पे हमें smartly करना नहीं है, यहाँ पे हमें करना है कि we are supposed to write the objectives with help of the acronyms, that is SMART. That means SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So how to write? So I've just come to the second part. I hope you have understood till this part of the training, of the session, that, okay, these are some of the aspects of learning objectives and outcomes. And now I'll be going in detail with how to write smart objectives and what ways are we going to write about smart objectives, and of course the learning outcomes as well. Okay, so can some of you give me thumbs up? Please don't scribble on the screen. Yes, Mohammed sir, right, you have written right. Yes, Madhvi ma'am, Shalini ma'am, thank you. Jyoti ma'am, thank you. Now, coming to the next part, that is specific. So how are we going to write about learning objectives? Always remember, objective should clearly state what you want students to learn or achieve. We have to avoid vague goals. Instead of saying understand, please, I always recommend, this is a tip for all the educators present here. Please, all the facilitators, please do not write the vague terminology. Understand is a very vague term. So instead of being understanding photosynthesis, please, we can say identify the stages of photosynthesis. Can be more specific. Then I would recommend, of course, it has to be measurable. Whenever we are trying to frame learning objectives, they need to be measurable. That means it should be something we can observe, we can assess. Means, can I ask whether this learning happened or not? So that is measurable. And how? So students will list at least 5 stages of water cycle, or students can take care, okay, write down the steps of photosynthesis, how it actually happens. So all these can be measurable. Next thing is achievable. Now, what objective we are trying to frame, that should be realistic. That means within the student level. ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए कि हमें उनके एक doable lesson plan बनाना है. Right? You cannot expect from a 5th grade student to write a research paper, right? So, okay, a 5th grade child can definitely write a paragraph on it. Okay, so try to write, a goal must be realistic, achievable by the student at that particular age, right? And it should stretch their abilities a bit, not that means it's a doable ability should be achieved. Okay, to this time our students are going to increase their marks by 80%. That is a achievable goal, right? And it is measurable also. and it can be relevant also. So my next slide explains the objective should connect to your curriculum goal and the students' real world context. For example, suppose you are trying to, in geography, you are trying to tell about maps. So map is both in a geography class and real life also. What is the legend of a map? How we are going to, okay, what can be seen? So all these things we can just tell students so that they are able to relate it back to the real world, related back to the classroom. So these kind of objectives are relevant objectives, right? Then comes time bond. Of course, by the end of the lesson, student will be able to solve, say for example, 5-word problem using multiplication. छोटा सा ऑब्जेक्टिव होना चाहिए, doable होना चाहिए, achievable होना चाहिए, measurable होना चाहिए, and of course the child should be able to complete in the limited time frame, right? They achievable clear cut time frame is also important when you are trying to frame up a learning objective. So I'll just give you one very great example here. I hope you're able to see the side. See, by the end of the unit on the chapter materials and their properties in October 2025, 90% of grade 6 students will classify at least 4 materials, that is example glass, plastic, um, sugar, sand, as soluble or insoluble, and describe their properties accurately, scoring at least 8 out of 10 on a rubric based classification task. So don't you feel this learning objective which is written is SMART? That means it is specific. That means it is trying to tell us about focus on solubility, classification and material properties के बारे में बता रहा है. Measurable है because greater or equal to 8 out of 10 rubric scores for at least 90% of the student. Why it is achievable? Because supported by experiments, discussions and scaffolding activities. हाँ कर रहा है. Relevant क्यों है? Because it is directly linked to the curriculum learning on material properties, and of course time bonded है because it is trying to tell us that, okay, complete by October 2025. So this is a learning objective which is smart. It is fulfilling all the requirements and hence easier to frame. So this is what is about learning objectives. Now, Abhi, there is one more way, okay, how to frame learning objectives. Learning objectives, when we are trying to frame, it should also, we can either follow the SMART category, the SMART framework can be applied. Even we can apply ABCD framework. What's ABCD framework? Ki audience. Okay, bhai, chalo, who is the audience? मेरे ऑडियंस कौन है? मेरे ग्रेड 6 के बच्चे हैं. ओके, मेरे ग्रेड 10 के बच्चे हैं, मेरे 6 स्टैंडर्ड के बच्चे हैं. दीज आर माय ऑडियंस. हु इज ट्राइंग टू वर्क? किसके ऊपर हम लोग काम करें? सो वी आर ट्राइंग टू वर्क ऑन द ऑडियंस, दैट इज ग्रेड 6 स्टूडेंट्स. देन बिहेवियर, व्हाट? So B stands for behavior. That is what are we trying to either we are trying to understand, explain, classify, distinguish, demonstrate, all these things. And condition, when or how. Given a list of materials is, okay, this is the condition, I have to do like this. We have to frame up, okay, I'm going to today teach about Pythagoras theorem, and to what degree, how well, that is with 80% accuracy. That is one type of example I'm trying to tell you about. So either we can follow the SMART way, or the ABCD framework can be adopted when we are trying to frame learning objectives. I hope this is clear. Now, this is again a small example I've tried to give you here. So water cycle, of course, objectives kya ho sakta hai? Label 4 stages of water cycle. Fractions in mathematics, what can be taken? Okay, compare fractions. Okay, so this is what is about the learning objectives. Now let me go to the other part, that is what is learning outcome and how are we going to frame learning outcomes. Any doubts till now? Okay, if you can ask in chat later, I'll be definitely addressing them. Okay, thank you everyone for this. Okay, till now if it is clear, let me go towards the second aspect, that is Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy, of blackboards, right? There's a column being made, and I've always told all my facilitators, all my teachers that, okay, what is helping us? What is the foundational framework to frame any learning outcome is nothing but our Bible, Bloom's taxonomy. So, Bloom's taxonomy is a foundational framework in education that aids in crafting clear, measurable, effective learning outcomes. What is expected from our students? So, of course, you all are aware of it categorizes different cognitive skills into the hierarchical model. So, all of you all are aware about Bloom's taxonomy. I consider that, and we are all the educators should align any learning outcome or even objectives with the desired depth of learning out of these cognitive levels. So, what are the cognitive levels in Bloom's taxonomy? Of course, to remember, to understand, to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, right? So, if particular objective falls in that particular depth of learning, then we all should be able to write effective learning outcomes. Say, for example, um, identify the desired cognitive level. So, what is the complexity of thinking you are expecting from learners? Okay, say, use verbs. Okay, all Bloom's taxonomy has verbs. See, this is Bloom action verbs. Put a great chart. If you are not able to memorize it, just paste up a chart of it in your near your cupboard, and you can every day, if you try to just go through this Bloom's action verb, it will help you to frame specific, measurable, accurate learning outcomes. Say, now if I try to tell you, okay, knowledge, under knowledge, if you want to analyze the learning or assess the learning falling in this cognitive level of knowledge, then which all action verbs can help us frame are these ones which are written. That means define. Define what is photosynthesis. Define what is motion. Define what is force. Describe, recognize, tell, explain, recite, memorize, quote, illustrate. And next comes is understanding. Under understanding cognitive level, these are the various action verbs which we can utilize. Next is to apply. When we are trying to assess application, analyzing skills, evaluating skills, and recreational skills, or to create skills, or to creative analysis is done, these are the various Bloom's action verb which we can relate, we should be utilizing in our day-to-day teaching. Whenever we are trying to frame, okay, try to understand that, okay, solve these particular problems or complete, sketch, use, teach, discover, correlate, contrast. When you are trying to analyze something, okay, contrast, connect, devise about, or conclude about something, that comes under the analytical flowers. Then comes evaluation, of course, defending, valuing, prioritizing, planning, grading, reframing, criticizing. All these would come under the evaluating, right? And similarly to design, okay, role play, to develop a mind map, okay, design a mind map, modify this particular theory, invent, write a small summary of it, recapitulate it. So all these things will help in creating, right? Now I have coming back to the example, I had stated that I will try to explain some of the things with help of examples, because as a all of you, all esteemed educators here, you may be belonging to different sectors, you may be teaching different subjects. So I just thought of having put it on these slides here, that let me explain few examples of learning objectives and expected outcomes out of it. So say if we are trying to design mathematics class 7th ke liye, if you are designing learning objective, if you are trying to write, understand and apply operations with integers, fractions and decimals, explore geometric concepts and their properties, interpret and represent data effectively. So what can be the learning outcome? So suppose you are trying to explore geometric concept. So of course, outcome has to be, you need to assess again, construct, analyze geometric figures, understanding symmetry, area calculations hai. So all these things will be coming under expected outcomes. Whereas learning objectives agar mila, interpret and represent data. Okay, so of course, data is we are going to effectively represent it with the help of bar graphs, the help of measuring the central tendency, mean, mode, medium hai, collect hai, organize hai. All these things can be applied, and the child can learn about interpreting data, which is your learning objective, right? Next, suppose example hai English ka. Now, suppose learning objective is enhance reading comprehension through diverse context. So, what the child will tell, the student will interpret and analyze themes in literacy or informational text. Or we can write if learning objective is developing writing skills across various formats. So, the expected outcome can be okay, can coherent essays, narratives, reports with appropriate structures and styles. That can be learning outcome, right? अगर हम लोग learning objective, if you are trying to analyze, okay, say expand the vocabulary and grammatical accuracy. So how are we going to write the related, the expected outcome of this is utilized and enriched vocabulary, correct grammar in both oral and written communication. There are ample amount of ways we can, utilize expected outcomes, analyze it, and at last demonstrate with help of certain activities, listening skills, writing skills, and then assess those, right? So that is what is we are trying to do. Next is, of course, in social science, learning objective, agar aap social science ke teachers hai, so of course, understand geographical features and their influence on human activities is something is a learning objective. So what can be your expected outcome? So interpret maps, geographical features के लिए maps interpretation कीजिए, influence on human activities के लिए understanding the environmental interrelationships can be one of the outcomes. Or there are ample amount of outcomes you all can sit, brainstorm on what other objectives. Oh, this is the objective of my lesson plan, so this can be learning outcome that you can always write with help of course, Bloom's taxonomy verbs falling in which cognitive level. For learning objective, try to analyze, okay, I have to write it smartly, I have to use the ABCD framework pattern, then I'll be able to form proper learning objectives. That is the way we are trying to analyze this. Okay. Of course, because I'm a science teacher, I would like to more emphasize on science related topics. Learning objectives investigate the characteristics of living organism in their life processes. So life processes mein bahut sari life, there are ample amount of life processes: reproduction, respiration, about nutrition, about central nervous system, all these things. If you have to explain the processes of any life process, a process of nutrition can be explained, respiration, drawing diagram, drawing mind maps, concept maps, all these things will come under outcomes, right? So exploring the physical and chemical properties of substances. So if you have to try, identify and describe the states of matter and their transformations, that can be the example of expected outcome, which is related to this learning objective. Now, one thing I would like to tell to all the educators present here, first of all, right, I hope you all are clear till this slide, and let me proceed further, that always learning objectives and outcomes are typically written, I'm suggesting this, in present tense, because they describe what students will be able to do now, or they at the, Priyanka ma'am, please do not scribble on the screen, just a minute. Okay, I've disabled the annotations. Please do not scribble. Thank you. Write in present tense. So I was telling about कि सभी शिक्षकों को एक सलाह है कि present tense में ही लिखना है. Why? Because see, we are trying to analyze what students will be able to do now or end of this lesson unit. You have to often use the action verbs from the Blue's text, or like identify, describe, analyze, create. So objectives are we have to write in present tense. Okay, please analyze this. Please work on this. So even when they refer to future learning, okay, understand that we write them in present tense to clearly express the expected competency or the behavior the student has to achieve. Okay, and hence, and of course, Bloom's taxonomy verbs are to be used, identify the main idea and analyze data, draw conclusions about climate patterns, create a mind map. So all these things should be written in present tense only. So please keep this. This is a great point. So you have to write in present tense. Next is choose a learning outcome. Now, when we are trying to choose a learning outcome, what we need to design is a supporting activity is also important. ठीक है बाबा, बच्चों को हमें बोलना पड़ेगा. मैं बीच में हिंदी बोलना चाहूंगी because I feel it is you all can understand it also. Now, suppose a learning outcome is there. Say, for example, we have to design this alignment. Designing is also crucial. Suppose you have framed a learning outcome about, okay, identify the various steps in photosynthesis. So, designing a support activity is that activity has to be present. Of course, with the activity, you need to frame or assessment of that particular activity also we need to do, right? So, how are we going to align activities and assessment? That is also crucial part of learning outcomes. So activities must lead to certain kind of outcomes. So try to understand, analyze activities are all when you are trying to frame a lesson plan, learning outcome, plus the activities related, plus the assessments which are related should reflect those outcomes. And hence rubrics for them, setting rubrics for this evaluation is also important. So start, what is the decision? Okay, well, this is the process, and what is the flow line, and what is the end outcome of it? That is very crucial. And hence, learning outcomes will help us to align these activities. After learning outcome is set, align those activities and assess what should reflect those outcomes. That is very crucial and important, right? Say, for example, I'll just explain this the above the slide before with example in science. Say, learning outcomes, students will be able to design and conduct experiment to test scientific hypothesis, right? So, what can be the assessment? Okay, student undertake a laboratory experiment where they formulate a hypothesis. That means they are collecting a experiment, collecting the data, present their findings, and then concluding in a detailed lab report. That can be the assessment. That means here we have aligned the activity also and assessed the activity also, which is based on the learning outcome, right? Say another example is in social science. Suppose students will be able to explain the causes and effects of major historical event is our learning outcome. So iske based activity kya hona chahiye? Student create a timeline of historical event. Then assessment kya hona chahiye? Highlighting key causes and effects and present it to the class. Can be it's like assessment. We can give marks based on that, right? Am I correct? So this is how we're going to link learning objectives and learning outcomes. So how to write them effectively, and most importantly, how they improve the students' learning and they improve the classroom focus. Please understand this, educators, that whether you are a new teacher, a seasoned teacher, or someone in academic leadership role, this is very fundamental aspect, always overlooked many a times, that what is the practical tool and examples of writing learning objectives and learning outcome is very important. And of course, NEP has, and last slide, I would like to tell you all that NEP has laid a lot of emphasis on holistic development encompassing cognitive, social, emotional, and physical aspect. So NEP prioritizes what it is trying to prioritize what students actually learn, not what is taught, right? So shift, NEP focuses on shift from rote learning to a conceptual understanding or even the real world application. This is where clearly which comes into picture is learning outcome would help all of us, right? And policy also says, NEP policy also says that all curriculum or pedagogy must be designed to be outcome oriented. So this is very crucial, and learner should be learner centered hona chahiye and flexible bhi hona chahiye. Okay, and of course NEP promotes OBE, that is outcome based education. If you see where NEP is, where learning is assessed based on demonstration, because NEP moves towards continuous formative and outcome based assessments also. So you all must be doing HPC, that is holistic progress cards. So that is why it is mandatory by NEP, because it requires, see, this course also is trying to emphasize that not only academic scores are important or on learning progress, but even value skills and all the learning outcomes which are predefined, we need to work on it. So learning objectives are broad goals of course or program, while learning outcomes are specific, observable, measurable. Learning objectives always align us with teaching NEP goals, whereas learning outcomes help track real learning and master them, right? So again, I want to just do a small recap. So in this session, I have worked on learning objectives and outcomes. I've tried to explain about different objectives and outcomes, differences between them, how to write SMART objectives or with the help of ABCD framework, how to write about with the help of Bloom's taxonomy, how we can write learning outcomes, how to align assessments with outcome, and connecting, of course, to NEP and CBP. CBE, competency-based education, is what is the aim of this outcome related education, right? And lastly, outcome based education. And lastly, I would like to say that teachers learning objectives will align you with teaching even the NEP goals, whereas learning outcomes will help track real learning and mastery of. With this, I would like to end my seminar. uh, if you have any queries, if any questions are required, you can please ask them. I think so it's 9:50 as it was told. Ravikant sir, any queries? So till this, any queries, any one of you?
Yeah, those who have any queries can come forward.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Jyoti Krishna ma'am.
Yeah, I request participants to come forward and give your valuable feedback so that it would be helpful for the resource person to uh, plan, make it more better, the upcoming sessions of got a proper idea of learning objectives, highlighting, highly enriching session. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Vidya ma'am. Thank you, Lizzie ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So,
Neeta ma'am, thank you. Thank you, Divyani ma'am. So I hope you have got the zest of it, and we have made
And,
the session
and
clear.
very well explained the two basic concepts of the lesson planning, that is learning objectives and learning
Thank you,
goals.
Punita ma'am. Thank you so much. बस थोड़ा सा आसान करके बताने की कोशिश की है मैम. That's what I've tried my best. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Deepa ma'am. Thank you, Manjushri ma'am.
yeah. So, dear participants,
Including all
I am
the verbs to be used. Including all the verbs to be used. That table is very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Punita ma'am. So, dear
Thank you.
participants, those who are new to our session, I am sharing the link of our webinar group in the chat box. I have already shared. You can join our webinar group to stay informed about such wonderful sessions which we are conducting on daily basis. These days, we have sessions on daily basis. And that's how it is. Hope the session was uh, engaging and wonderful. And lots of appreciations to the resource person of the day, Ms. Ananya Kulkarni, for making
Thank you so
such a
much.
huge concept so simple for the teachers. So these days, this is what is required, and this is the good quality of an educational leader, making macro things into micro and ensuring that the what do we say things are happening. So most of the teachers are always confused with learning outcomes and learning objectives and teaching objectives. So today you have made it very simple for each one of us, and I believe all 40 other than you 40 people are here. All 40 of them are going to make good use of it and plan wonderful lessons for the sake of students. Congratulations and keep up the good work, ma'am. We are planning, I mean, we are expecting you to come up with many such sessions in future.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this guide.